everybody, it's Drybear. A new week means new reactors, so let's talk about the best reactors to farm this week in the First Descendant. So these are all the reactors, as well as the best places to farm them, the amounts that you'd be looking for these specific builds, and the Descendant / build that you'd be looking for to farm them on. So these are the best ones here. The rest of them have other options, but they're just not really best in slot, or they're not super useful long term. So these are the ones that we're gonna look at, and we'll look at them in character order. And you'll find a link to this image for the week down below in the comments and the description if you wanted to reference it for your farming this week. Starting with Lepic, there are two places to find the best in slot Mega Man Lepic, as I call it, but basically is maximizing the uptime of him using his unique weapon and then using as many of those balls as possible to do a lot of damage. There's two locations this week to get his tech-focused reactor, and for that you want to run the impact rounds weapons because it gives you a better uptime on SPS and better scaling from the mods on impact for this specific build. The first spot is going to be Starfall Road inside of Hagios. Is going to be this region up here, a very easy, clean region to run if you're trying to farm the Lepic reactor. And for this area, I like running Ancient Quantum Facility for the easiest time getting reactors to drop. Now, the other option is Fire Tech for Derelict Covert in Echo Swamp, but this is going to be a high power round variant. So if you're desperate for Lepic or you want to run some variant with like Afterglow Sword, you can certainly run that for Derelict Covert. And inside of Derelict Covert, I like running Verdant Greenery. It's a very fast mission with high density with really good drops. Next up is Esiemo, the Sweaty Pitman. There's one reactor for him this week, which is going to be more focused on his fusion-based build, but I think I try to include as many characters as I can in every one of these so that people that want to farm long-term or if they have downtime between seasons, they can farm. So there is actually a good reactor for Esiemo this week. Also keep in mind that there are two different builds for Esiemo. There is a tech version and a fusion version. So if you wanted to run the tech version, which is just focused on detonating for Esiemo specifically, it's going to be the same synergies as the Mega Man Lepic. So you'd want Fire, Impact, Tech for that specifically. It works great for him. However, one of the best reactors you can get for his fusion-based build is now available this week in Kingston Grand Square. It is a Fire Fusion option, and keep in mind that fusion still applies to his detonations if you actually activate the detonation yourself, as his second ability is technically fusion, so you have that option there. But for this, I would run an Enduring Legacy mount. It's perfect for him. He has lots of great AoE. Enduring Legacy gives him good flexibility as well as some synergy with Fire on top of that. And inside of Grand Square, this area up here, I personally like running the Kingston Surveillance Radar. All of these are kind of the same, but I would say that of these, the most efficient is Kingston Surveillance Radar. Now for Blair this week, we usually get a lot of Blair reactors. Like Blair, Viessa, and Freyna have a lot of reactors every week because they're so specific in what they're able to do, but there is a very good Blair reactor that you can pick up this week. And that's going to be here, Forward Base in Hagios, Fire, General Rounds Dimension. Dimension is the primary AoE for Blair, and it's great to use an Enduring Legacy for this one for the same reasons that we ran it with the Esiemo build as well. Enduring Legacy currently is one of the best weapons in the game. Great for single target, very flexible, high rounds, and also works well with Fire as well. Then inside of the forward base area, the mission I like the most is actually the anti-aircraft defensive position. There's the other option for this is going to be Cargo Management Zone. Both of these are pretty decent. It's an area where you'd have to do one stand in place, then you have to kill enemies and destroy a generator, but there's so many mobs in both of these, they end up being really good. The first part of anti-aircraft defensive position is a little slow, but the second half of the mission has large amounts of spawns toward the end leading up into the boss, which gives you a lot of options and opportunities for dropping reactors. Now there's another option for Blair this week as well. It's the build that I run on my bunny for basically everything. I run a singular focused AoE bunny with an Afterglow Sword as my mount. And the way I use this is I use the bunny to farm all the mobs, and then I use the Afterglow Sword to destroy any elites that are there instead of running like a high voltage. And I think Blair can also benefit from that same methodology. So you take Fire plus Dimension, you mount an Afterglow Sword on it. His Fire Dimension does all the AoE mobbing, and then when you need to kill an enemy, you can snipe them in the head with the Afterglow Sword, and you're good to go. Now, in this area for Timberfall, I used to recommend Organic Recording Terminal, just because it's the simplest and the most straightforward and the easiest to farm if you're just kind of mindlessly doing it. However, recently I found to get slightly more reactors to drop in Timberfall Power Facility. I think both of these options are worthwhile, but I find that I have a higher drop rate in Timberfall Power Facility, though if you're just trying to AFK and watch Netflix or something, then then organic recording terminal is very straightforward. You can just mindlessly go through it. Next up is Viessa, and she is one of the hardest ones to describe because she has so many different builds. This is mainly because her core kit has two different damage types, like ability types, but a lot of her mods will switch up what those ability types are. She could be singular, she could be fusion, she could be tech. There's a whole bunch of different ways to build her, so we're gonna have to go through all the different builds that are viable from the reactors this week. The first one is going to be a blizzard-based Viessa. So you have two different options for blizzard-based Viessa. Some people like the projected blizzard, some people like the scaled blizzard up, but those are always going to be tech builds if you're focusing on the blizzard damage primarily. In this case, we have chill, impact rounds, and tech. For this, you can run like Blue Beetle, Nazacer's Devotion, or Wave of Light. All are great options. The crit rate isn't super high, so Blue Beetle isn't necessary, but all of those are good options for you if you're running Repository Sterile Land for a tech-based Viessa. In this area, from chat, they recommended a great mission, Kuiper Mine. This one's awesome. You can go inside, and in the area where you activate the terminal, if you stand in the area and just AoE, this is like one of the few missions in the game that spawns new mobs if the mobs that are active die, and so you can just keep endlessly farming them, and you have a very high drop rate in Kuiper Mine, so this is definitely the mission you want to run. Next, if you wanted to do the same build that I have for Bunny, which is again, you run with a high power round like Afterglow Sword, and then you focus on abilities to clear mobs, and then your Afterglow Sword to kill elites. There's an option for that in the restricted zone this week. However, this is a fusion type ability, and this is going to be mostly for like a Cold Watch or Snap or Hypo build for Viessa that focuses on fusion. So if you wanted to do like a pure mobbing build for Viessa that focuses on that outside of her blizzard, then this is the option when you run. This is probably one of the best dungeon builds you can run for her. You can use Cold Watch, you can use Cold Blooded, you can use the Hypothermia, you can put any of those on it and work with fusion, and it gives you a lot of great options. And for this, you would run Afterglow Sword. Inside of the restriction zone, I recommend running the Barracks mission. This one has a very high spawn rate of mobs, and it's a very short mission as well. You can run this over and over until you get the reactor you're looking for. There's also a singular, like absolute zero build Viessa option you can get in Muskeg Swamp. It's unfortunate that we don't have Frostwatcher in the game right now, so we had to skip some of the impact round options for this, but this is a very classic, like very classic absolute zero build for Viessa. You run the singular version of her mods that convert all of her abilities into singular. Then you run Chill, Clairvoyance, and Singular as an option, or you could also run Secret Garden if you really wanted to, and if you really wanted to, you could run King's Guard, though I don't recommend it for her, because if you're running an absolute zero Viessa, you don't need help killing mobs. It's usually just single target, and so that's why I like running like a Secret Garden or a Clairvoyance in this case to get really good options for that. And inside of Muskeg Swamp, my favorite option is the Tree of Truth, a very fast mission with a lot of good mobs in it that you can farm the reactor you're looking for. And outside of absolute zero, if you really wanted to run like a singular focused Hypothermia Viessa as well, you could run with the storage option, which is Chill, Singular, General rounds. This one's going to be like pretty much built for any kind of content. You would run like Enduring Legacy on this one, and you'd run Chill, Singular with like, again, absolute zero or like Hypothermia. Put these together with an Enduring Legacy, and you've got a very stable all-rounder build that is going to be useful for almost every situation. Inside of the storage, you can run this combo here, which is the outpost into the reactor back and forth since they're so close together. But if you're looking for a very easy mission, out of these, Previous Construct Team Quarters is going to be the best density. You just want a good range on AoE like a Bunny or a Valby, clear the mobs, and as soon as the mobs die, new ones will spawn, you'll be inside that building, and you'll get some good drops, you can reset and go again. Lastly, until we get Frostwatcher as a weapon in a couple weeks that will open up some new Viessa builds, we have another option for the Blizzard-focused Viessa. So if you're a Blizzard-focused Viessa, which is going to revolve around tech scaling on that, you have a great option in Moongrave Basin, White Knight Gulch this week, Chill, Special Rounds Tech, and for this one, you can run, again, either Secret Garden or Clairvoyance if you want to make the Blizzard better, though typically I think Clairvoyance is a little better for some of the other abilities since the Blizzard is so fast and ticking there, but it also works with a Blizzard, so you can run the Chill, Clairvoyance, Tech with this one inside of Moongrave Basin. And for Moongrave Basin, I like running the Water Cooling Recording Device. This one has two different spawns that you can go at. Go to the B site spawn and kill the mobs until it ends, and then reset the mission, and you'll get a bunch of drops on the ground. Next up is Bunny, and she only has some farming Bunny options here, which is going to be singular. She does have an Electric Condense build that I like a lot for fusion, but you really don't want to run the versions that we have available this week. It's more for like skill sharing or that sort of thing. So she has two farming singular Bunny build options you can get for reactors this week. The first one is as classic as it gets. This one has been a fan favorite for a long time for most people that like running the farming bunny build since the beginning of the game launching a few months ago. This is an electric singular. All her big AoE ring is singular, whether it's high voltage or not, it's still singular. And general rounds means you can run Thunder Cage, which means that you move fast because you have the SMG speed. You have very easy option to shoot if you ever need to shoot, and you have some nice mounting on a weapon that you can keep in your hand at all times. Very classic. This is one of the best bunny reactors that you can farm for just atypical farming bunny. Then inside of Misty Woods, I would take the far left mission, Hazy Swamp. Very easy, high density, easy to clear. You'll get a bunch of reactors this way. Next, if you're weird like me, you could run the Drybear bunny build, which is the one that I like running. It's just, for me, it's more enjoyable than running a high voltage build. In this case, you run electric, singular, and on high power rounds. I've run this build basically since the beginning of the game and since I've had bunny, but I like running an Afterglow sword fully maxed out with a singular build mounted, and so the AoE clears all the mobs. Then when I get to an elite, I just snipe in the head with the Afterglow sword and it ends up dying. And I like this because it gives me good range. It allows me to rely on gunplay and abilities. So it's a little bit of a variant. So if you wanted to run the high power like Afterglow sword or Piercing Light, if you prefer that, there is an option for that. Sterile Land Ironworks. And inside Ironworks, the best option for this is going to be the Mission Weapon Processing Facility. You have one that collects balls in this region and the other one kind of sucks. This one has decent spawn. There's two major spawns separated all across the room from each other. So we'll go inside the weapon processing facility. It's just extermination. You'll get a bunch of reactors. Next, there is a single reactor available for Freyna this week. There's pretty much two major builds for Freyna, and both of them are suboptimal because of the way she functions. So we're desperately hoping for a Freyna rework in the next couple weeks so that she can open up a lot of her skill set to make things work. So I have a build, a Widowmaker Freyna build, which focuses on maximizing her unique weapon Dot, and for that you want the reactor I'm about to mention, and then outside of that you can also run Secret Garden as a great option because it works with her abilities. Just keep in mind that her poisons and her room 0 trauma dots just don't interact with each other. So if there's one already on the target, it doesn't get updated, it doesn't stack, it doesn't refresh. All of that is just kind of very limited. So I try to make a build that makes the most out of current Freyna, and that's the reactor we're going to talk about. That's going to be in Aurora Forest Fortress this week, Toxic, General Rounds, and Tech. And the reason we run this is because we basically only use our third ability and our ultimate unique weapon because it has the highest scaling of Dot. We only apply the room 0 from our ultimate, and we only apply poison from the third ability. So that way that overriding doesn't have to be a problem. And then we run a Python while the Dot is running with duration to make that work. So that's the Widowmaker Freyna build. It's the best build for dots in general. And until they fix things, it's not going to be any other options. There are things you can run with like general rounds, like you could run with a Fallen Hope. You could also do Secret Garden with Tech. But again, all of your dots are constantly going to be butting heads right now until they fix the way that damage over time works in this game overall. So if you wanted to get the Python mounted Toxic Tech Reactor, it is in Aurora Forest in Fortress this week. And for that, I would run Snowy Heights. This is a payload mission up here, so not very good to run. So the only option for this area is Snowy Heights, which is pretty decent. Next up is Gley, and she actually has some really interesting builds, especially since Executor came onto the play and got buffed up. So there's a bunch of different options you could run for Gley if you're looking to pick that up this week. Inside of Vespers, the Ruins this week, we have non-attribute Dimension, which is the primary methodology for Gley in all of her builds, and then you have general rounds on top of this as well. So what you could do is you could run Enduring Legacy Dimension. You could do the Crunch Gley, which focuses on her snap ability to do AoE damage, or you can do Weapon Gley. Although if you do Weapon Gley, you probably want to do something other than general rounds. So this is kind of more of like a Snap Gley version that doesn't use Peacemaker. So it's kind of it's not perfect, but it gives you a great option for that. And there's some other characters that will benefit from this as well. And inside this area, I would run Ruins Courtyard to farm this reactor. Hagios Dune Base has a special rounds variant for this for Gley if you want to run a Secret Garden version inside of Dune Base. And for this area, the mission I would recommend is Vulgus Blockade. It's way better than the other two in this spot, but you can also run the Outpost if you choose. And the last one I would argue is the best of these options right now. It's not really meant for Crunch Gley or Snap Gley, but it is a great option for Spam Gley and the new Executor Gley as well. So this is non-attribute Dimension, which is what Gley requires, but it's high power rounds. You could run with like a Sigvor's Proof or Burst Launcher build. You can run with a Shotgun build or a Sniper Round build, or you can use the new Executor Gley, which is really, really hot right now ever since Executor got buffed. So you can pick that up in Hagios, the Corrupted Zone, probably with an Executor mount. Inside of the Corrupted Zone, you can run with the Outpost, which will give you some good farm there, but if you don't want to run that, the other option that I would recommend is Deep Digger. This is a very high density mission. It takes takes you around this facility a little bit, but if you like learn the route, you actually will get a lot of mobs spawning and a good amount of drops for reactors as well. Next up is Kyle the Forgotten. There's a couple characters that don't see the light of day as much, but Kyle actually has two very interesting builds based on which ability you're trying to scale up, and there are two reactors this week that work really well for him. And it's actually the same two reactors we just talked about. Non-attribute Dimension, if you're doing a dimension-based Kyle, you can do general rounds on this one as well with Enduring Legacy. You can even do a Thunder Cage too, because sometimes Kyle struggles with decent AoE on that front, so if you wanted to run a Dimension Kyle, you could run this in Vesper's Ruins. Or you could run the even better variant, which is the Secret Garden variant, since he's able to stack it properly. Non-attribute, Secret Garden, Dimension in Dune Base in Hagios this week. Next up is Jayber. The same one we just talked about for Kyle is going to work great for Jayber as well. So Dimension Secret Garden is a very easy pickup for him and allows him to run some very easy builds. And that is the same one here, Hagios Dune Base. You want non-attribute Secret Garden for Jayber in this Dimension build, on the Dimension build, and then run that here for Dune Base. There's also two decent reactors for Enzo this week, and especially an Enzo build that I absolutely love that I never see anyone playing, which is a infinite ammo shotgun-based Enzo build with like an Executor or a Smithereens. Super fun to play. You have infinite ammo and it gives you a good flexible ability to spread out your damage when you need to. Again, that's going to be the non-attribute Dimension high power round from Corrupted Zone. You want to know what weapon you're trying to target focus for this. Shotgun Enzo is like probably the best version. You can do Launcher as well, but I think Shotgun has the highest value, and for this I would run either Executor for well-rounded damage or Smithereens for mostly Colossus, because you need to be able to hit the weak point as directly as possible with Smithereens to get the most value out of it. The other option is going to be a singular Enzo build, which isn't super strong right now, but with the way they've been buffing like out of meta characters, hopefully they make it viable for him as well. So if you wanted to run a non-attribute singular viable singular option for Enzo with impact rounds, you certainly could. That's going to be in Vesper's Moonlight Lake, and for this I would probably run Wave of Light or Nizastra's Devotion just to round out his overall build. For Moonlight Lake, I would also run Lakeside as the mission because it's the easiest farm with the most amount of mobs. Next is a nice option for the farming Luna, which is going to be a singular option for impact rounds, and this is primarily for like the Noise Surge build, or if you just wanted to use a combo DPS build for her. This is going to be Vesper's Moonlight Lake, non-attribute singular with impact rounds, and for Luna I would recommend running like a Nizastra's Devotion or a Wave of Light. You could also run Blue Beetle if you wanted to, but my personal preference is for the first two weapons. And again, in this area I like farming Lakeside for the most amount of drops. Next up is the main healer Yujin. He has 3 different reactors you can pick from this week that are all pretty decent depending on what you're looking for. That means that the same option for non-attribute singular impact rounds is very good for Yujin as well if you want to run the singular version of Yujin with impact rounds. And this one you can run basically any of the impact rounds options depending on what you want to build. They all work for Yujin and what he's looking for. However, if you want to run the fusion Yujin, there is a non-attribute special rounds fusion option in Ogna Desert Vermilion Waste. For this one you can run, again, almost all the special rounds. I wouldn't run Clairvoyance, but you could really run either Greg's or Secret Garden if you wanted to, or if you wanted to be more of an AoEer, you could run King Guard Lance. My personal preference would probably be the Secret Garden option for great single target, but it can also just be very well rounded with a Greg's Reverse Fate mount on this one. And inside Vermilion Waste, my favorite mission is going to be the Rock Cave base in the very middle of the zone. Very easy run. You run through the cave, run out, and when you get to the end, just hold your mission status, reset the mission, it'll teleport you back over here, and just keep running that route over and over for very high drop rate. However, I will argue the best option for Yujin this week is going to be the non-attribute general rounds fusion option for him. This is the reactor that I would farm the most for Yujin, and you can run non-attribute fusion, and for this one you'd run Enduring Legacy, which is a very great, it's great at single target, good high up damage on DPS. You can help teammates while you're firing it as well. Very well rounded. The only major downside with this is that it's smack dab in the middle of one of the worst zones in the game, the White Knight Gulch Hatchery. Inside of Hatchery, my favorite mission is actually going to be Upper Hatchery. You can also run Lower Hatchery, though I would reset it about halfway through when you see the drop in the mobs that are spawning, but otherwise Hatchery just kind of sucks and is very slow, so I would recommend just running Upper Hatchery, complete it, go back to the start, run it over, and you get a very nice Yujin reactor this week. And lastly, let's cover Valby, who has 3 different reactors to look at this week for 2 different kinds of builds, depending on what you're looking for. The first one is going to be basically either the general farming build for Valby, or what I'm going to call Frogby for the time being, which is her leapfrog build where she can leap in and do lots of damage. Now it's going to be a non-attribute attribute dimension option here. All of her ground AoEs are dimensions, so you can scale up that very easily. And for this, I would just run Enduring Legacy. She doesn't really need the Thunder Cage, though if you want to spec her for pure mission farming without single target, you can run Thunder Cage. It would be a decent option, but I think Enduring Legacy gives her more options as she's able to freely move inside of her liquefied state anyways. And this would be the Vespers, the Ruins, which is the same one we talked about earlier. But if you wanted to run her Leapfrog build, which is based on her leap ability with the special Transcendent mod, this would also be a great option for her here. You could do Leapfrog with even like a Thunder Cage, and then focus on the big AoE from the Leapfrog. This gives you some nice scaling out of that. Then if you wanted to run Gun Valby, which is probably one of my favorite Valby builds, this focuses on using like Supply Moisture with her major gun builds on top of that, and then also scaling off her fusion effects to get very easily usage out of her main or ultimate unique weapon where she brings that out. That's fusion as well, and you can use this with a lot of different builds to make some serious DPS output from Gun Valby. So if you wanted to do Gun Valby, you would run the Agna Desert Vermilion Waste option here, non-attribute fusion in this case, and then I would run Secret Garden. It gives her excellent single target burst. Secret Garden, even if you don't activate the passive, which she can't without a tech ability, it's still insane single target DPS. The burst fire in Secret Garden is ridiculous, and she's able to combine some really good spread with some very good AoE burst, and it works great on her ultimate unique weapon as well, which allows her to get some decent AoE out of a Gun Valby build. Then the other option is going to be the Yujin reactor we just talked about in White Knight Gulch Hatchery. This is non-attribute fusion again for Gun Valby that focuses on using her gun for most of her damage output, and in this case you would run an Enduring Legacy. And I think Enduring Legacy Gun Valby, super balanced, very well rounded, can do a lot of different things, and I think most people are sleeping on Gun B as an option because you can get some serious firepower increase, and then when you need to, you can bring out your unique weapon for some extra fusion burst, all of it well rounded together, and gives her a really nice build that you can run. Again, this is going to be Hatchery. Unfortunately, with Upper Hatchery, is that going to be there. So that is the reactors of the week from September 24th to 9/30, September 30th. The options you have this week and the reactors I would look to farm. And again, if you just keep up with these and farm, you'll eventually have a reactor for every build in the game, which is really, really cool. So these are the options that we have available this week. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people. And don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.